So we're going to start, and hopefully, as we move along, we'll get quorum. I'm sure we'll get quorum. We've been fairly good at getting quorum. And then we'll take care of business, the minutes and things of that nature. So I want to welcome all of the new members who are here tonight representing the different community boards and the different elected officials. If you don't know me, I am Chaplain Ingrid P. Lewis Martin. I am the Deputy Brooklyn Borough President, and I welcome you tonight on behalf of President Adams. Okay. We have two presentations tonight. The first one will be a presentation by the MTA New York City Transit on the Brooklyn Bus Network Redesign Existing Conditions Report. Do we have representatives here? Yes. Come on down. So we have Andrew Ingleby and Evan Bielatoski. Did I say that right? Bielatoski. Okay. So it seems to be more than two people. Who are the other two? Who are you? Charvy Gonzalez and? Alan Zenura.
Aaron Sabura from New York City DOT.
Okay, thank you. So we have Mr. Ingleby. He'll speak first.
Yes. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Good evening, everyone. As most of you know, my name is Andy Inglesby. As was mentioned, I am Assistant Director for Government and Community Relations for New York City Transit. It's always great to be at the Borough Board meeting to update you guys. I know that we were here last October when we talked about the kickoff phase for the Brooklyn Bus Network redesign. We're delighted to be back here today in February to talk about the existing conditions, which is the second phase of the Brooklyn Bus Network redesign. I'm going to walk you through a short presentation. We're more than happy to answer any questions as they come up. And then we will certainly be back later in 2020 as the program progresses. So as we mentioned back in October, the Fast Forward plan that President Andy Byford initiated really set forth four key tenets. And one of them is to reimagine the bus network, which is what we're doing with the Brooklyn Bus Network redesign. And what the Brooklyn Bus Network redesign is really all about is it's a holistic blank slate approach looking at Brooklyn from a fresh perspective. As you guys know, some of these routes, they haven't been redesigned for years. So what we're really doing is we're really taking a fresh approach, a blank slate approach. We're asking the people that come to our community board meetings, our workshops, and the people that fill out our surveys online. What are you guys looking for? What do you envision? What is your most important part of your bus experience? Do you want more bus stops? Do you want less bus stops? Do you want more direct routes? Do you want bike lanes? Do you want bus lanes? You know, it's a complete. When we say blank slate approach, we really mean it. And we've heard some really amazing things during the last fall, when we had the initial kickoffs. And finally, what I'd like to mention in the beginning is that we did have we had on-street engagement at 10 busy hubs, distributing over 17,000 brochures. We also hosted 10 open houses during the kickoff phase. That was in October and November. That was all across Brooklyn. We received more than 2,300 survey responses between October and December, and data collection and analysis on demographics, expected growth, travel trends, and bus performance. They were all collated. So what we're doing now is, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Evan Bielatoski from our Operations Planning Unit. We are in our existing conditions phase, which is really phase 2 of this project. We're taking a look at what we've seen already, and then we're incorporating the comments that we've got during the initial phase, the kickoff phase, and putting that all together to eventually have a draft plan, which we'll talk about the latter stage of this presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Evan right now, and I'll be back.
Can everyone hear me? All right, great. Thank you, Andy. Happy to be here tonight. I'm Evan Bialystotsky from Bus Service Planning. I'm project manager for the Brooklyn Bus Network Redesign project. Last week, we released a report on Brooklyn and its buses that we're calling our Existing Conditions Report. We've compiled everything that we heard from the public, from you all, over the last few months at all of our meetings and through our surveys. And all the data we've compiled, we've been looking at a lot of information about Brooklyn and how its buses performed, how its neighborhoods have changed. And we've compiled all of this into a report that we've published on our website last week. It's available for anyone to see. We're happy to share the link afterwards. So this report is divided into 5 chapters. The first is on the borough of Brooklyn and its people. We look at diversity trends, we look at various demographic trends, population density, employment density. We talk to Department of City Planning, where growth and development is especially is expected in the next few years and where it's been happening in the past few years. The second chapter is traveling around Brooklyn. There are plenty of other ways to get around Brooklyn other than buses. We talk about the pros and cons, the advantages and challenges of each of those. So subways, Uber and Lyft, ferries, dollar vans, et cetera, et cetera. We touch on the general transportation network of Brooklyn as a whole. And then chapter 3 is really the meat of the report. It's buses in Brooklyn, how they're doing. We've seen declining ridership over the last few years, slowing bus speeds. We have an old network that's mainly based on old streetcar routes. Our buses are not so reliable. We look at a whole bunch of data to try to quantify that and try to figure out what's working and what isn't and what we need to change to make things work better for Brooklyn and its residents. The fourth chapter, What Customers Want, really summarizes all the feedback we've gotten over the last few months from the open houses, from the surveys. And we found, when we really analyzed all the comments, we categorized them into 5 main customer priorities, which are increased frequency on buses, faster speeds, better reliability, more connectivity to other parts across Brooklyn and into other boroughs, and ease of use. And the last chapter really looks forward as part of this project and what we're doing here, which is reimagining the bus network, erasing the bus map, redrawing it from scratch, where to really match the Brooklyn travel needs of 2020 and beyond. So I'm going to go through a few more highlights of this report. There's plenty more online. Please take a look when you get a chance. So this map is a little bit dense, but I'll try to explain what's going on. This is called an activity index. So it combines residential and employment data to show the overall density of the borough. Areas that are primarily shaded red are mostly residential. Areas that are primarily shaded blue are mostly commercial or industrial. Areas that are shaded purple are a mix of both land uses. Regardless of the color, the darker the shade, the higher the concentration of activity. So we start to get an idea of the activity centers of Brooklyn and where people might want to travel to. In general, as you can see, the density of activity increases as you travel north and west through the borough. Overall, we found that population has grown in Brooklyn between 2010 and 2017 about 5%. Though it's not spread evenly. Particular neighborhoods that have grown are downtown, this is probably very familiar to all of you, but downtown Brooklyn, Williamsburg, Spring Creek, Red Hook, etc. The economy of Brooklyn has boomed since 2009. Private sector growth in the borough as a whole has outpaced the rest of New York City, New York State, and the country. The number of businesses has grown 32%, and private sector employment has grown 39%. So huge numbers. Is the bus network really getting workers where they need to go? It's a big question. Downtown Brooklyn is still the largest business district outside of Manhattan, but what we found talking to DCP in particular is that while it is developing rapidly, nearly every other neighborhood on a percentage basis has grown faster, has grown more. So really jobs are decentralizing with our bus network so focused on downtown. Again, the question is, are we serving the outer neighborhoods where more jobs are, where more people are living? Again, I touched on expected growth. These are just 2 examples: Sunset Park Waterfront, Navy Yard, East New York, Spring Creek, etc. We looked, as I mentioned, at how people are traveling across Brooklyn. This is a map of zero-vehicle households, so households that do not own a car. The darker the color, the higher percentage of households which do not own a car. As you can see, there's a big difference between northern Brooklyn and southern Brooklyn. Overall, borough-wide, 55% of households do not own a car. Looking at census data, 62% of commuters travel via transit, whereas only 23% of commuters drive to work. Looking at the subway, 31 of 170 subway stations within the borough are accessible. So the bus has many purposes. The bus goes places where the subway doesn't go, but the bus also provides accessible access where subway stations are not accessible. And it will continue to do so, and that's very important to us to maintain that and increase access across the borough with a subway system that doesn't necessarily work for everyone right now. One other interesting thing that we found is that most bus customers are already transferring as part of their journey. People love their one-seat rides. They love to get a nice bus ride right from their door, right to their office. But what we found is 37% of customers are transferring to another bus to complete their trip, and 35% are transferring to the subway. So the bus network really works as part of Brooklyn as a whole. It's a network. Everything needs to work together. I'll add, one more point. On the ADA front, as mentioned in the report, 28 stations within Brooklyn are on our list of current or planned capital projects to make them accessible. So that will almost double the total within the next few years. So that's an exciting development. So, in looking at our bus network, we see positives, we see strengths, and we see limitations. This is a 1969 map of Brooklyn buses. If you look closely, which is hard to see on the screen, it looks somewhat similar to what's out there today. In many places, that makes a lot of sense. A bus on Nostrand Avenue, a bus on Kings Highway, all make perfect sense. But there's some limitations. In many neighborhoods, circuitous routes with lots of turns, slow down travel. It's a slow trip to get from your home to the subway station or to work. In many neighborhoods, buses operate on nearby parallel streets, which splits our resources. We have limited amount of buses, limited amount of budget. If we're splitting our resources between two streets, we can only offer half the service on each one, as opposed to doubling frequency on one of them. Bus priority is generally limited to SBS corridors and doesn't benefit most Brooklyn bus riders. Closely spaced bus stops slow travel because the bus needs to slow down every few hundred feet to pick up a couple customers, slows everyone down currently on the bus. Narrow streets and turns hamper reliability, which is a big complaint of our customers. And there are plenty of opportunities to add and improve connections, to better connect Brooklyn's neighborhoods and to connect Brooklyn to Queens, for instance, Staten Island, generally get people across the city. So this is a customer-focused project. Our goal is to better serve our customers and to serve Brooklyn as a whole. And again, these are the 5 main priorities that we keep hearing from our customers. So first is to decrease waiting time and increase frequency. Currently, customers wait longer for the bus than they expect to according to the schedule, about 2 minutes on average for each trip. So they're not only waiting longer than they think they should, but they're not happy with the schedule. They're not happy with how often that bus comes, even if it's coming on time. Decreased travel time through faster buses. Brooklyn bus speeds are the second lowest in the 5 boroughs, traveling on average at 7 miles per hour, and they've slowed significantly in the last few years. Customers want a more reliable network. About a third of the time, it takes customers 5 minutes or more longer than is scheduled to complete their trip. That's waiting plus the time on the bus. So that's a significant portion of our customer base. It's really not an efficient mode of transportation. Customers want improved connections to more places and access to more of the city than they have now. And they want the bus network to be easier to use. Simpler routes, it's clear where the bus is going. If the bus is on one street, it stays on that street. When it stays on a main street, gets them directly to a subway station, for instance. So these are what we have heard from our customers. So we've compiled this report, we've published it, but that's not the end, right? We're going to use this report to go on to reimagine the Brooklyn bus network. There will be a new blank slate network drawn from scratch. As I said, much of it will look similar. You know, the heart of Brooklyn is still the heart of Brooklyn. The main streets are still the main streets, and they'll continue to have bus service. But are we doing the best we can on with our buses, with our limited resources. We're going to try to create connections to new places. We will look to consolidate bus stops to increase travel speeds. We'll be working with DOT on newer upgraded bus priority to increase travel speeds as well. We'll be looking where possible to avoid narrow streets and difficult turns to increase reliability. And what our customers really want is increased frequency. Now with limited resources, that is very challenging. We don't have the money to just add more buses, and we don't have the buses to add more buses to every route at all times a day. So how we increase frequency will take some creativity, and we'll be working on that in the next few months. So I'm now going to turn it over to Aaron from DOT. DOT is our partner on this redesign project as they operate the streets that our buses travel on. And yeah.
Thanks, Evan. So DOT is supporting the MTA on the Brooklyn Bus Network redesign effort as it goes through its steps. As Evan mentioned, we can provide sort of a red carpet for their buses on streets in Brooklyn through bus lanes, through queue jumps, through transit signal priority. There's a wide variety of features we can apply to try to make buses faster and more reliable. And what we've taken on as our sort of piece of this effort is to look through various steps where the trouble spots are for buses in Brooklyn. So these lines on the map, and you can obviously see them in much more detail if you look at it online later, are the very first cut of like all the trouble spots that we've identified in Brooklyn for buses, the sections of routes that are particularly slow or unreliable. So as we go forward, what we're going to do is sort of follow along and assist as needed with the process of redrawing the bus network, and also look more deeply at the data behind a lot of these segments of streets. You know, which are the worst. You know, which have we done something where we could make an upgrade? All those kinds of considerations, and then as part of the next step of the Brooklyn Bus Network redesign, we'll then come out with a more focused, narrower list of places that we're interested in pursuing those bus priority features on. And you know, as people who you know, have dealt with bus lane projects coming to their community boards for many years now, you know that we don't come with this many at once, or even one-fifth of those at once. This is a multi-year effort. This is showing, for the first time really, a vision of where we want to really be providing a special place for buses on city streets so that people can have an idea of what's to come in their communities. And obviously that's a process that is going to require feedback all throughout the steps of the redesign. And then also, once the redesign's done, we're going to come back to every community individually and have those detailed conversations about specific streets. But it's sort of like planting a flag down about where we want to be going in the future. So I believe Andy Inglesby is going to come back up and just talk through next steps.
Thanks, Aaron. So yeah, just to finish up with this presentation. So right now we are in the middle of, in the early stages of developing the draft plan. This is the existing conditions as we've said all along. The draft plan is going to be developed, and we expect the draft plan for the bus network redesign to come out in the late second quarter of this year. So we'll be constantly in contact with the community boards and the elected officials during in the interim process. But late second quarter, we should be coming out with the draft plan. We will be soliciting customer and community feedback on the draft plan. That'll consist of workshops. We're going to the Brooklyn Borough Board again. We'll be going to the community boards. So in all those forums, we'll be hearing comments regarding the draft plan. For the final version, the final goal is to develop a final plan, which is a proposed final plan, which we are anticipating getting out by the end of this year. So that's the immediate calendar. Draft plan by the end of second quarter this year. getting feedback, going to community board meetings, and then developing a final plan. And even though the final plan, the draft final plan is scheduled to come out by the end of this year, it does not mean that you obviously will be seeing changes. We will be, in constant community contact regarding the final plan after we come up with the draft plan. So no changes to the bus redesign will happen until at least 2021, because we want to get this right. I mean, we're taking our time on this. I think I mentioned this at the kickoff plan, the phase. We want to have a lot of different phases here to go make sure we're able to go out and have workshops at different phases, go to the community boards in different phases. By the time the whole plan is done, we will have gone to the Brooklyn Borough President's office 4 times. So, as I said, we want to get this right. We want to do it because this is a great opportunity for us to, really reimagine the bus network, and we want to hear from everybody and as many people as possible. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the chair for any questions that might be out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ingleby, for the presentation, and to your team. I want to welcome our Borough Commissioner of DOT, Mr. Keith Bray. If you don't know him, Commissioner Bray is with us, and I'm happy to have you here tonight. Before I open up the floor for questions, I want to remind everyone, in case you're new, that if you do have a question, please take one of the microphones, state your name and the board you're representing or the council member. And I'm happy to announce that we have quorum, so after this presentation, we'll take care of business, and then we'll move on to the next one. So do we have any questions? Please state your name and your board.
Richard Flatto, Community Board 3. Just a couple of questions. One, maybe I missed something, but did you talk about ridership trends on the buses?
Before, Mr. Flatto, before we answer that question, I just wanted to say that the last slide, we will have this presentation up on our website by, I'd say, 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock tonight. So it's just another part of our website that you guys can take a look at new.mta.info/Brooklyn Bus Redesign. And I'll make sure I get the Borough President's office a copy of this presentation tomorrow as well. So, thank you. So.
Yes, there's plenty in the report that it's 250 pages long. I don't have time to cover everything tonight, obviously. Yes, there's discussion of ridership trends. Ridership is down. Uber, Lyft, ridership is up. That's documented in the report. We're trying to figure out what we can do to get some customers back, what neighborhoods, what to focus on.
How much is the ridership down?
14% in the last 3 years.
Yes, please.
I just wanted to make a comment that...
Please say your name and your board. Thank
Joy
you.
Simmons from the Office of Councilmember Inez Barron. Just wanted to make a comment that a lot of people in our district have complained about not having seats, the benches, and the bus shelters at bus stops. So just wanted to bring that to your attention in terms of as you look at new bus stops, perhaps, that you look to see that they can accommodate benches and bus shelters, because that's one of the major complaints that we have, particularly with our seniors.
Sure. So shelters and benches fall under the category of bus stop furniture, which our colleagues DOT are in charge of, but we're in constant contact with them regarding that. So that's a point well taken, and we'll certainly discuss that with DOT, as well as the people in New York City Transit. Absolutely.
Oh, hi, Janice Morgan, Community Board 16. Just to add to Joy's comment about the bus shelters, I believe that the bus shelters should have the decal that says, please give the seat to a handicapped individual. It's on the buses, but they don't actually exist in the bus shelters. So you oftentimes pass the bus shelters and see a senior standing while some other able-bodied person is sitting on the chairs. And if the shelters actually had that decal, I think we could see a reverse in the behaviors of individuals, and it could prevent, like accidents at bus shelters. So I would ask that you consider that as you are doing this redesign.
Our borough commissioner is about to come up and speak a lot better than me on this. So.
Okay.
Harley, Andy, Harley. We can take a look at that. As they were explaining, actually the way bus shelters work is a franchise agreement we have with actually J.C. Deco. So they have a street furniture franchise for the whole city that includes bus shelters, newsstands, and other things. So we have a standard agreement with them to do that. So we were looked and asked them if they can do that, and we can get back to you.
Wonderful.
Hi, Gail Smith, CB14. I recall that in October, because I was also present for your first presentation, there were several of the community boards that were concerned of the involvement, the participation for open houses. And I was just curious as to what was done in that regard.
That was my question.
Sure. So as I had mentioned, I believe I had mentioned in October that the 10 locations that were selected in the kickoff phase were just, you know, we needed to break Brooklyn down into 10 sections for the kickoff phase. We did that. We are planning on having workshops in every community board. You know, as I said to end the presentation, we want to get this right. We want to. It's a long process. There's 3 different phases that are still going to go on to enable us to go out to do more workshops. So between the existing conditions report, the draft plan, the final plan, we're going to have outreach, not only workshops throughout Brooklyn, but also we're going to every community board as well. So you guys will see us out there multiple times in all community boards throughout Brooklyn.
All right, but does that mean that you will look at those that you've not gone
Absolutely.
to
Yes.
first this time around?
Yes, we will certainly do that.
All right, thank you.
Aaron Ampao, Community Board 17. I'm sorry, but I'm somewhat confused with that answer because we voiced concerns about where the workshops were being held. I specifically remember the map that was presented to us. I'm from Community Board 17. The closest event was, I believe, in Medgar Evers College, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So my residents have to take the same buses that are problematic to get to that workshop. And for me, I'm somewhat disappointed because we voiced it, but there were no changes made. And now you're telling us that we'll go to each community board district to make a presentation. So if it will help me to understand if you can specifically detail what your plan for community board outreach is. Is it physically going to each community board and make a presentation, or are you going to use the same structure you did with the workshops and just have a centralized location where some of our residents cannot get to easily?
Going to each community board at least once during the rest of the process is definitely part of it, most likely twice, to each community board. And then we will also be having workshops, various workshops during the different phases throughout Brooklyn to hear from everybody. So yes, we will be going to the community boards, but we will also have workshops throughout Brooklyn.
Go ahead, one more, and then
One
let
more
me
thing, I
move
think
on.
one of the concerns you had mentioned was that you were looking for ADA accessible buildings. So if you are interested in coming to Community Board 17, I can definitely refer you to ADA accessible buildings outside of libraries so that we can host something outside of a community board meeting. Thank you.
Sure, that'd be great.
Hi, I'm Warren Burke, Community Board 9. I'm more interested at this point with the research design, and you found the fact that frequency is the #1 complaint, and that's what you want to solve. So you have DOT, you have the MTA, and in my mind, are you integrating enforcement? So if you do this whole redesign and everything else, and the roads are blocked, so my feeling is it should be integrated into your plan.
I'm not an expert on the subject, but generally my understanding is better enforcement of bus lanes and bus stops is a general part of the fast forward plan, not specific to bus network redesign, but generally we've introduced forward-facing cameras. We have forward-facing cameras on our buses already for accident liability claims. We're now using them to enforce bus lanes on the B44 that was recently launched, along with new decals on the buses, reminding drivers that bus lanes are for buses. We are, yes, agency-wide, we are trying to do more, working with NYPD to better enforce bus lanes.
Hi, Alex. Hi, Alex Gershman, Councilman Chaim Deutsch's office. One of the most common complaints that we get about buses is bunching, and I'm just wondering if anything is being done to address that, because if that's addressed, that could solve multiple concerns at once. It would make the buses more reliable, it would make them go faster, and it would increase reliability.
Absolutely agree, and that's definitely something what we have heard from our customers. There are many possible reasons for bunching and no one magic bullet. One thing we can do as part of the network redesign is that turns are tough. Left turns, you're waiting for a break in oncoming traffic. If you have another bus 3 minutes behind, or it's supposed to be 5 minutes behind, but it catches a good break and you haven't, now those buses are closer together. Things like removing turns, if possible, keeping buses going straight. Obviously, if you need to really do need to serve a destination that we need to make a left, we will continue to do so. But really thinking through absolutely every turn a bus makes, and if it's really needed, that's one way we can start to tackle this problem. Looking at congestion down here in downtown Brooklyn, for instance, making sure there's enough space for our buses to park so that they can leave going out on schedule. There are many factors, but yes, absolutely we are looking at that, and that's one of our main motivators for this project.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, Richard?
Richard Flatel, Community Board 3. So one of your goals was better connectivity. And I know in Board 3, and I'm sure in many other boards, there are a lot of subway stations that have closed exits. Are you looking at reopening some of those exits to enhance connectivity?
So that's kind of a separate topic, which I can certainly address individually, but we've received many requests to take a look at open station entrances that have been closed for many years. So we are taking a look at them. We have reopened some of them recently along the L line in order to enhance that project and make it easier for our customers that were affected by the L. But we will be looking at that in the future. I can't give you any details as far as specifics, but it's certainly something that we're very aware that the community has concerns about.
Okay, I have a question. You had 10 open houses. How many people participated in open houses in total?
Approximately 300, a little over 300.
So we had 300 people that gave you guys an assessment or an evaluation of issues that they had concerns with, and you were able to come up with your presentation based off of the 300 people?
Well, we incorporated the existing conditions, what we've found previously regarding the bus network, and we incorporated the comments. Not only the 300 comments that we received, the 300 people that attended our workshops, but the over 2,300 survey results that we got on our survey as well.
So you had 2,300 surveys plus the 300, so that's 2,600 people if nobody in the survey was one of the participants in the open house. Question for the Borough Board members, how many of you heard about the open houses? How many? Could you put your hands high so I can see them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and you heard about it? No, I mean, did you get an invitation and you knew where they were other than the meeting here? I'm talking about not from here. No, other than here, when they came to present to us, how many of you heard about the open houses? 2. Okay. So I don't know. I just think that the outreach could be better. And when you first met with the Office of the Brooklyn Borough President, we were very clear that we expected there to be a full-on effort to have good outreach so that the people of Brooklyn would have a say. When you came before the Borough Board, all the Borough Board members made it very clear that they were very concerned about the outreach. And I have to state on record that I have a concern about the outreach. I didn't even know when the 10 different meetings would be held. I didn't even know. So I think that the outreach is lacking, and I don't know if there is an opportunity for you to hold more, before you move forward with your plan. But I don't think that is really fair to the people in Brooklyn, and I don't think that the people in Brooklyn had a fair say. You have people here representing 18 community boards, and you have people here representing council members, and only two heard about the open houses. And you guys came here and made a presentation, and you said that you would go to every community board, and you would contact every community board to make sure that they were aware and that they were informed. And now you're here again telling us the same thing. So I just want to make it very clear that outreach needs to be done.
I appreciate those comments, but I can tell you that we did do outreach, and we did contact every community board, and I will make sure that it's a priority to make sure that everybody is very well aware, but I certainly sent out the press release when we announced the open houses to every community board and every elected official. I will make sure that that is done again, and we can certainly have, if any community board feels like they were, they were not recognized during the initial process, feel free to contact me. But I can assure you that we did reach out.
Okay, but I think that a press release is not the normal way community boards and offices are given information about open houses. I think a direct call to the community boards and to the elected officials to let them know we're hosting an open house and it's in this area is the better way. Communication. If we're communicating, we shouldn't communicate through a press release. Do we think that a communication through a press release is sufficient? No, we don't. So I think that you should figure out a good way to make sure that the community is informed when your future open houses are, when they will be held, and where they will be held, so that people in the community can know and that they can inform their constituency. Because we do not inform our base by press releases. We inform our base by giving them proper notification. We call, we send emails, we send out proper notification. And then we may do a press release in addition, but that's not the mode
Just to
of
be clear, I
communication.
sent an email with the link to the press release with a little bit of information regarding it. So if you think that I only sent a press release, then I just want to correct that. But duly noted, Madam Chair. I will we will make sure that everyone is completely notified about the future workshops, and obviously when we invite ourselves to come to each community board.
Okay.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on with community board business before we have a presentation by the nurses, by NISMA. Thank you. Yes? Excuse me? Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Public comment, yes, you may. Yes, so please wait, I forgot public comment. No, you can take the mic. Yeah, sure, sit down for a second. Relax. State your name and...
Yes. My name is Sandy Balboza, and I'm from the Atlantic Avenue Betterment Association, an advocacy group in downtown Brooklyn. And I just want to mention there's another project, the BQX, and it's very unpopular in all of the neighborhoods that it's that they have a proposed route going through along the waterfront, and then it comes up through Red Hook and Atlantic Avenue, downtown Brooklyn, and goes around. Anyway, so what I want to say is that when this BQX project appeared, everybody was saying, why don't we just improve the bus system? So I think most people in the various communities would support this project to have the bus redesigned and relate more to what's happening now than the routes that were created after the trolley was taken out, and sort of follow that. And I think the BQX is, is taking funding away from mass transit projects that are needed, the subway and this project. So, and the BQX would be very disruptive in the neighborhoods that it would be going through, and there would be some eminent domain used in that project, and buses would be a cheaper, less, not a disruptive process, tried to, and buses could change routes if things needed to be adjusted. The BQX would be stationary, and it also follows, it overlaps bus routes, and it overlaps subway underground routes. So anyway, just wanted to mention that. I know in other community boards, people, you must be hearing about the opposition to the BQX.
Okay, but this meeting tonight is not about the BQX,
I
but
know.
I understand you're saying that buses are a better alternative than the BQX. And for the record, we are all very much in favor of buses having better routes, more friendly routes, extended routes. It's just that we want to make sure that all of the communities have a voice in the extension of the routes and the improvements that are being made to the bus system. That's the issue that we were talking about.
And that's
not
what
the
I'm
not
supporting.
not the project. We like the project, but we want to make sure that voices are heard. That's the issue. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we'll move forward with the business at hand. Savannah, we'll call the roll, please.
Community Board 1, Community Board 2, Community Board 3, Community Board 4, Community Board 5, Community Board 6, Community Board 7, Community Board 8, Community Board 9, Community Board 10, Community Board 11, Community Board 12, Community Board 13, Community Board 14, Community Board 15, Community Board 16, Community Board 17, Community Board 18, Council members. Councilmember Levin, Councilmember Reynoso, Councilmember Cumbo, Councilmember Cornegie, Councilmember Espinat, Councilmember Machaca, Councilmember Lander, Councilmember Eugene, Councilmember Ample Samuel, Councilmember Barron, Councilmember Brannan, Councilmember Yeager, Councilmember Luis, Councilmember Mizell, Councilmember Traeger, Councilmember Deutsch, Board President.
Present.
We have quorum.
Okay, so we have quorum. That's a good thing. I thank you all for making sure that we have quorum. Everyone should have received a copy of minutes from, when was the minutes, the last one? January 4th, 2020 Borough Board meeting. Are there any, do we have any questions or comments? Does anyone want to make any corrections or revisions to the minutes? Okay, so all those in favor of adopting January 4th, 2020? January 7th, you have the 4th.
I apologize, 7.
Okay, no problem, sorry. January 4th, 2020, Brooklyn Borough Board minutes. Could somebody please make a motion? Okay, so Teresa made a motion. May I please have someone second the motion? Yeah, you have to say your name. And
Julio Pena, second the motion, CB7.
okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously. So now we have a presentation from our nurses. We all love our nurses, right? Yeah. So the New York State Nurses Association, better known as NYSNA, they're here, and they're here to ask you to vote on the resolution for Safe Staffing for Quality Care Act. So we have a draft resolution, and they'll do a presentation. Thank you. The draft resolution was given when I wasn't here, right? You have to talk to the mic. If it doesn't work, take mine.
Thank you. I feel like I talk loud anyway. Hi, good evening. My name is Crystal Rogers. I'm actually a political and community organizer at New York State Nurses Association. We were here the end of last year, 2019, and one of our nurses read a very emotional poem about one of her patients that she felt could have been saved if we had proper staffing in New York City hospitals. And so I just want to give a quick update as to where we are with the resolution. We actually went out to a few community boards. I want to thank Community Board 3 and 9 for passing a resolution. Thank you for your support for our nurses. And Ari Moma is one of our nurses at Interfaith. You want to come on over, Ari? You want me? I can read it if you want. But Ari has actually come out to sacrifice his time. He's actually on a 1-hour break from the hospital and will return to the hospital. And so that's how bad the staffing crisis is. Our nurses can't go home at the end of the day. And so I'm just going to read the resolution, and then Ari can help me answer questions.
Let me just interject really quickly. Lori Lewis presided for me that night. I couldn't be here when it was first presented, just to refresh your memories in case you don't remember. Okay, because this is really important to the Office of the Borough President. We support it, so let's.
Okay, so Resolution 396 was sponsored by New York City Council member Fernando Cabrera and Rafael Salamanca. It's a resolution calling upon the New York State Legislature to pass and the governor to sign legislation requiring the New York State Department of Health to establish safe staffing ratios to ensure all accurate care facilities and nursing homes meet minimum safe staffing standards for nurses and all direct care staff. So we're asking for the state to mandate staffing ratios, and for not one group to decide what those ratios are, but for the state to decide and for it to actually be law. Whereas the term direct care staff refers to workers under a variety of job titles, including nurse aides, nursing assistants, and personal care aides who provide hands-on care services and support. And whereas, according to the United States Department of Health and Human Services, inadequate nurse and other direct care staffing levels has led to poor patient outcomes, and whereas in order to maintain low operating costs, hospitals will often reduce the number of nurses they employ because they compromise the largest clinical subgroup in hospitals. And whereas studies indicate that higher nursing workloads are associated with increased medication errors, increased rates of infection, and even increased mortality rates. And whereas, according to a study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, each patient added to a nurse's workload is associated with a 7% increase in the likelihood of death within 30 days after release. And whereas the New York Times has reported the nurse in New York City have treated up to 15 patients at a time. And whereas, according to a report published by Health Services Research in 2012, nursing homes that have safe staff ratios for nurses and all direct care staff have better quality facilities and improved function status of the residents. And whereas, according to a study published by Health Services Research in 2010, implementing minimum nurse-to-patient ratios is associated with a decrease in both nurse burnout and workload injuries. And whereas the New York City hospitals have struggled to maintain adequate numbers of qualified nurses, and whereas, according to a study published in the Journal of Nursing Administration, nurses who work in environments with adequate staffing levels report greater job satisfaction and a reduction in the intent to leave, which leads to a great nurse retention. And whereas the National Institute of Health and other studies suggest implementing nurse-to-patient ratios leads to a decrease in operational costs for hospitals due to greater nurse retention, shortened patient length of stay, lowering penalties and reduced reimbursements resulting from poor patient outcomes, less readmissions, and a reduction in malpractice costs. And whereas the NIH has also reported that safe staffing levels are associated with increased patient satisfaction scores and hospital quality ratings, which influence reimbursement rates from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. I'm just going to pause right there, and I want to send out a report on each side of the table. I'm sorry, I should have started
That's
here.
okay, it's all right, it's okay.
It grades New York hospitals, and if you just skim through it, you will be shocked at where we are. And whereas, according to a study performed by Healthcare Management Review, having more nursing staff can increase profitability in competitive markets. And whereas in 2004, California passed the minimum nurse staffing legislation, which required the California State Department of Health to establish in hospitals to institute specific nurse-to-patient ratios. And whereas given authority to the California State Department of Health, provided flexibility to adjust specific ratios when needed. And whereas in 2008, the California State Department of Health changed nurse-to-patient requirements for telemetry and specialty care units to mandate lower minimum nurse-to-patient ratios. And whereas studies have shown that nurses in California have reported a better quality of life and improved patient care as a result of the law. And whereas the New York City Health and Hospitals expressed commitment to safe staffing during a June 2019 City Council hearing on safe staffing in hospitals, and whereas Dr. Katz, H&H President and Chief Executive Officer, stated they have implemented standard nurse staffing plans, hired and trained more nurses in a quick and effective manner, and launched a series of successful recruiting campaigns, such as Nurses for New York City. And whereas New York City's Health and Hospitals and New York City Council have embraced the need for safe staffing ratios, we should, New York State, and whereas ensuring adequate nursing coverage for all patients is an important public health goal that will improve the quality of care in acute care facilities and nursing homes. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Council of the City of New York calls upon the New York State Legislature to pass and the Governor to sign legislation requiring the New York State Department of Health to establish safe staffing ratios to ensure all acute care facilities and nursing homes meet minimum safe staffing standards for nurses and all direct care staff. Thank you. Do you have anything to add, Ari?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Again, my name is Ari Moman. I'm a registered nurse at Interfaith Medical Center. What I'm going to bring is the real life to what is really happening, and what we deal with every day we go to work. Before I delve into that, Dr. Kaz came from California. He was instrumental in establishing safe staffing in California. And the outcome is something that they can, they have a good result. Now, he is in charge of about 7,000 nurses, which are my colleagues. He is out for it. He supports it, which means that it's something good that they did in California. It reduces some expenses some of the hospitals incur when they have low staffing and poor patient care. And also at Interfaith Medical Center, my chief nursing officer, Dr. Austin, under the leadership of Lorraine Brown, which we know, they invested more during when we just concluded our contracts. They modeled into safe staffing. They put it into our contracts that this is what they want because they know the outcome. They know how to take care of their Brooklyn patients. More so, we are the baby boomers. Soon, we're going to be going to a nursing home. If you go to a nursing home, which I have worked and I've visited some of the time, you see that you have either one LPN, not even an RN, one LPN, and also maybe one nurse's aide, taking care of 40 patients. How can that happen? They end up having bed sore and all this. And also, I'm a psychiatric nurse. There are always injuries. We talk about safety. If you don't have enough staff, what happens is that staff get hurt, even patients get hurt. There won't be anybody, enough staff to intervene. So some of these facilities have already accepted it. But we need Albany. We need you to support it so that it will be a law. It will not be a treatment you will get in one facility and another facility. One thing is to be universal. New York is a healthy state. The richest state, if I may say, any state in the whole world. We have the richest people here in New York. Why can't we take care of ourselves? Why can't we pass the law to take care of ourselves? That's why we are here. And I'm a living witness. I deal with this patient every day, at least 6 days a week, because we don't really have that much nursing or the staff to do that. So we tend to do more. And at the end of the day, who suffers is our patient. We are not happy as nurses to go home and realize that the 10th patient I have did not get the adequate care he or she needs. That may be my brother, that may be my son, that may be my parent, or that may be me or you. Nobody wants to be treated the last as second-class citizen in a hospital. Please, that's why we're asking you, help us pass this resolution and force Albany to put it into law. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Richard, please state your name and.
Richard Flato, Community Board 3. Can you just tell us what the status is in the City Council? Has this bill gotten out of committee? And also, what is the status in the state legislature?
So the resolution at City Council, it's waiting to be voted out of committee, and we're sure that it will be voted out of committee. The hospitals committee is waiting for confirmation from the Speaker's office that it'll actually be placed on a stated agenda. And so I've been in touch with the Speaker's office, you can imagine, quite often this year. And they're waiting on the DOH report, the Department of Health. NISNA's response to that is that the resolution is very broad. No matter what ratios anyone ever comes up with, they can plug that in here. It doesn't have any bill numbers, and so it's very blanketed, and we don't think that we should have to wait for the DOH report. We want this resolution to push the state to do something. We want this resolution to push DOH to release that report, to push our legislators to actually force DOH to release that report, because we don't just want to be waiting on a report for forever. But that's where we are. Carlina Rivera is the committee chair for Hospitals Committee. And there's no friction there in them voting it out. It's really at the Speaker's office. And we have a new executive director at NISNA, and so she's going to follow up to see if she needs to meet with the Speaker directly and have the conversation, or you know, if that doesn't happen, we will have call-in days for the Speaker.
So the bill has not been introduced in the state legislature yet?
Not at a stated meeting, no, but it has been.
The state legislature.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yes, we do have 2 current bills at the state, and it's a 2-year bill. It's a 2-year bill that we're trying to move this year, yes. I apologize for that, yes. And it's in Ways and Means right now.
Teresa Scavo, Community Board 15. What is the safe staffing level in California?
I believe it's based on acuity. It's based on acuity. I want to say it's between 1 in 4 and 1 to 8, depending on a patient's acuity. So someone that's in the ICU needs more care than someone on a med-surg unit.
Okay, and the telemetry, that would be the acute care? The same staffing level?
Telemetry is an acute care, but it's a little bit lower than the ICU. It's lower than the ICU. Is basically 1 to 2 in California, and with even at it's like 1 to 2, 2 patients to 1 nurse. To 1 nurse. But for now, we are not really getting too much into the number, because the number may be complicated. It's going to be, it's just for them to accept that safe staffing, the most important thing, saves life, and some of the 2 bills we have already in the House for them to really, push it.
And you are not giving numbers, you're asking them to set the number.
Right. We're asking the state to mandate those numbers, and there's a working group that includes nurses. There's a working group where nurses are included in that working group, and so we're confident that the state can come up with those ratios. At this point, each facility comes up with their own ratios, and they're usually unable to meet those ratios. So a nurse in ICU should ideally be taking care of 2 patients. I've sat with a nurse talking to an elected official that says, when I have 3 patients, now why should I decide who lives? And that's the position our nurses are in. And you can imagine how emotionally devastating it is to be in that position.
This is similar to, I don't know how many people are familiar with the summer camp. I hate to equate it to that, but it's simple that way for me. When you have counselor to students, right? I used to run summer camps for many years, former teacher. So if you have very young kids, sometimes it's 1 for every 2 children. As the kids get older, then you may need 1 for every 5 children or 1 for every 6 children, depending on the child's age. So in the hospitals, I think it would be something where if someone's in ICU, it would be 1 nurse for every 2 people. If someone's not in ICU and they are not that sick, if they're in there for something less serious, it may be 1 nurse for 3 or 4 patients. And as the ailments get less and less and less, you may have 1 nurse for 5 patients. As opposed to now, you may have an ICU where you have 1 nurse running back and forth to 3 or 4 different people, which is almost untenable. So but they didn't give numbers because they're very confident that the state, working in partnership with nurses who are meeting with them, will come up with numbers that are fair and just and prudent. But I do think that as Brooklyn, we're losing hospitals tremendously. A lot of our people are going to Manhattan and, to get quality care. If there's a state mandate that nurses are given a certain ratio in whatever hospital you go in, that helps to level the playing field somewhat. So I don't know what you guys will vote or how you will vote, how we will vote, but I'm hopeful that we will work in partnership with our nurses so that their voices can be heard. They're the experts, and they understand what's really going on in the hospitals. And since I'm a baby boomer, and as you just said, I'm slated to go to the nursing home shortly, I want to make sure that we take care of business. So do we have any other comments or any other questions? No more comments or no more questions. Could someone, please?
Teresa Scavo, Community Board 15. I motion we adopt the resolution as printed.
May I have someone second, please?
Second the motion. Julio Pena, CB7.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any extensions? Any against? Okay, so we will definitely write a resolution and we will send it over. Thank you. We're going to also put out a press release because we're not just notifying people to let the world know that we support NISNA. And we commend you for doing an awesome job. And I thank you so much for your presentation this evening.
Thank you so much
You're
for
very
having
welcome.
us. I'm going
Our
to leave
pleasure.
cards. If folks want to follow up with me, you're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, and you should look at those reports to see where your hospital's at. Okay, so moving along. Do we have any old business, any unfinished business? Yes.
Julio Pena, CB7. I wanted to, thank you. I wanted to mention, I know a couple of weeks ago, the borough president held a public hearing on the Industry City rezoning set of applications that I had mentioned a couple of months ago. And I was a little frustrated that the hearing had to end early because I know that there were a couple of Sunset Park residents, several Sunset Park residents who wanted to testify. I'm curious to know when the borough president anticipates to share his position on the rezoning application.
Okay, well, I will say this. The borough president was very, I won't say annoyed, but he was dissatisfied with the level of disrespect that was going on in the room. And we know that it was not from the residents, it was from outside groups. But it's really hard to conduct a meeting when you have people who are being disrespectful and rude and not allowing a meeting to move forward properly, and he will not allow a meeting to go on like that. He will end the meeting, as would any of his team members. So if we're here to have a meeting, then we expect to have a meeting. So it would have been beneficial had the community residents made it very clear, we're here to have a meeting and you have to stop. We can't do that. So I don't know the deadline, but I know he has a deadline in which he has to make a recommendation, and he has never missed the deadline. So whenever the deadline is, he will definitely have the recommendation out by then. I don't know the date, but you can call Savannah and remind her to ask, and I will check with Richard Berrick, who handles our land use, and he will tell me the date, and we will let you know. You're very welcome. Any unfinished business pertinent to this body? Okay, do we have any, well, we don't have any unfinished, we have old business, but we went to Community Board 16, and
Yes, so I think it was the December meeting that we had a presentation by Popular Bank.
Yes.
With regards to establishing a banking development district in Community District 16, and it will cover all of the boundaries of that district. On January 24th, the State Department of Financial Services came down to Brownsville and held a press conference and signed the official certificate of approval. And so Brownsville, Ocean Hill, Community District 16 is now a banking development district. So thank you all for your support. And the next step is to obviously get the services to the residents and continue to hold, you know, these institutions accountable and make sure that, you know, our designation stays in place. And this is not the end, but it's the start to the, you know, future. Thank you.
Do we have, thank you. It was good. I was there. It was a great day for Brownsville and Popular Bank. I was informed, I think they have more than one banking district in Brooklyn, like 2 or 3.
This is their third one.
Yeah, this is their third one, so they're really doing good business, and we should support entities that support our communities, so that was really good. Do we have any new business? Once, twice, 3 times, okay. So may I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, the next meeting, sorry, is March the 3rd, 2020. And thank you all for coming today, because usually we meet on Tuesdays, but we had a special training in the building, and it's OSHA training. It will help people actually get jobs, so we were excited about it. And they use Tuesday nights, so we had to relinquish our Tuesday night. So thank you all for understanding. So may I please have a motion? I think I had a motion coming from Board 14.
Motion to adjourn.
You have to state your name.
Gail Smith, CB 14, motion to adjourn.
May I have someone second? I think Lori Cumbo's person was trying to second the motion. Well, could you state your name in the microphone? Okay, so Jonathan Marable, he seconds the motion. All those in favor? All those against? Any abstentions? Okay, so have a good night. See you, God willing, March 3rd. Thank you so much. Thanks, Joe.